Well, hello viewers, welcome to Chungu cha Jamii. I'm your host Eunice Mugo. Today on the show, we are talking about how to meet or to deal with unexpected expectations. I have a guest with me who is going to help us to understand better how to deal with this. I will allow her to introduce herself. Welcome, guest.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Nandi Wamwere. I'm a counseling psychology student at Catholic University. And today we will be discussing how to deal with unmet expectations in various aspects of life, in areas such as career or your relationships, personal growth, and also in parenting, because in all these areas of life, it's very common to have very high expectations and to fall short, which is very normal. So today we'll be discussing how to deal with that.
Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
And as we talk about that, viewer, I hope you can join our conversation today on how to deal with unmet expectations. What have you been expecting that has been unmet, either by yourself, by your friends, by your colleague, by your classmate? Just name it. Send in your question, your comments across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa. Our SMS line is 21144. So to start with, our topic today, how to deal with unmet expectations. What are we looking into? What are these expectations that are unmet mostly?
Let's talk about relationships. Let's say, for example, in your relationship, you go into a relationship expecting something and your partner is not expecting the same thing. So you'll find you people aren't communicating because you're expecting them to know what you want in your life, what you want in the relationship. And you'll find that because you haven't communicated what you're looking for, they will not be able to fulfill what you want. So you'll feel disappointed, you feel like they're falling short and they're not meeting your expectations, something like that, yeah.
That is in one perspective when you're talking about relationship. Maybe to start with, from maybe the grassroots, in regard to family setups, upbringings, your siblings, we have a lot of expectations from parents, especially as children when you're growing up, in regards to grades, in regards to performance, in regards also to comparison between yourself and your cousins or your siblings. How can this person who is subjected to expectations that he's not meeting, if I'm a child and I'm not meeting the expectations of my parent, how am I supposed to match up to that expectations from the child's perspective, and how does a parent also merge in to the expectation that she expects me to meet up, that I'm not able to be able to maybe bring me up to it as a parent as well?
I can start off by saying comparison is the thief of joy. So I'd say it's really not advised to always be comparing your child to other children because they're different people with different capabilities.
Sure.
But it's also not impossible to find yourself in such a situation. And what I can say is, for the child, your parent is comparing you to, let's say, your cousin who's doing better in school and your grades are not the same. First, I think it's important to ask yourself as the child why you're not getting to your parents' standards. If it's like, let's say, you're having challenges in school, it's also important to just don't sit on your issues. You go and tell them, Mom, I'm struggling in school. I know you want me to do better, and I feel I can do better if we implement this, let's say, remedial classes, tuition, extra classes, all that. So it's really important to also ask yourself what you can do to kind of fill the gap. And as for the parent, I'd say it's also important to, instead of focusing on the flaws of your child, focus on what they can do and how you can also help them get beyond what they're struggling with. That way you'll even find you can build deeper bonds with your child, your relationship grows stronger, and overall it's just a good situation for everyone to be in.
How is that a good situation for everyone to be in?
Once you've discussed, you reach an agreement instead of now constantly arguing, the way your parent is telling you all the time you're such a disappointment, you don't have that motivation to do anything anymore.
Exactly my point. If I
Yeah.
don't have this motivation for me to drive me to do better, to pursue better, actually this one demoralizes the child more. It gives the child even trauma if you're beaten to it, because let's say it's grade, let's say it's character, let's say, and maybe this other person that I'm being compared to, if it is grade, she might be in a good understanding or capability, because in as much as we've implemented the remedial classes and these other things, I might be talented in something different from what you're expecting me to deliver on. I may not be a book smart, but I'm talented in other talented activities like singing, like dancing, like football. But with our African culture, these are not the things that are muchly embraced, especially when it comes to talent-based. Today, in our today generation, is where we are having parents being relearning and appreciating talent. Before it was not there, and again, it's not every parent who is embracing the talent-based the talent-based as a career as you're growing up. So if you have such a parent who is not appreciating the talent per se, and it's he or she is so much into books, and me, I'm not gifted in books, so I'm being paid for tuitions, I'm being brought for homeschooling teachers, I'm being pushed literally to books, and it's not working out. So by the end of the day, I'm still a failure. So how am I able to overcome this by accepting myself and maybe accepting where I am, and also having the support of my family and them to understand that this is not my areas per se, but rather this is my area.
I think, like I said before, it's important to have that conversation. And oftentimes you'll find it's a very difficult conversation to have, especially with African parents.
Sure.
We can say they aren't the most understanding. They don't want to listen, but there are those who do listen, but not all of them. I'd say it's important to sit down and have that conversation, because let's be realistic. If you're struggling and it's something that's been happening for years, you've gone even to high school, you've really struggled through it, and your parent has seen it, and they just keep pushing you, it's demoralizing you, and you've not had that conversation, it'll get worse. But I feel like once you have that honest communication, it might not change things immediately, but I feel like it'll help change their perspective. And you can also encourage them to approach it differently and invest more in something that they will see the benefits of. Let's say your talent is in crafts, sports, and academics is just not your thing. For your parents to invest in that, it will also show that they really believe in you and they're really invested in your growth, and it will pay off. Yeah.
Interesting. In a nutshell or overview, when you are dealing with unmet expectations, what are these pointers that we should look into?
I think first it's to define for yourself what you want and how you're going to achieve what you want. And it's also important to have these definitions on your own term, away from what society is saying, what society thinks. It's important to just set it according to your own terms, so that you can also give yourself room to grow, allow yourself to fall down and get back up, because more often than not, you'll find society really pressures you, pushes you to have this fast growth, this exponential growth, and it's something that takes time. So it's important to define success in your own terms. What does success mean to you, and what can I do to achieve this version of success that I'm looking for? And it's also important to also step back from the opinions of others and just to focus on yourself, because everyone will always have something to say.
Sure.
Everyone will have something to say, so it's important to just look back at yourself, step away from societal pressure, and just keep working on yourself.
Interesting. Moving on. When you're talking about the unmet expectations, especially on personal growth, what are we looking into? Because if I'm building myself personally, if I'm building myself to be a greater version of what I was yesterday, what am I looking into exactly for me to be able to surpass my own expectations that I have not been able to meet over the years?
First, you need to ask yourself why. What's stopping you from getting to point B? And work on that. Sometimes it's also hard to really do it on your own. That's why it's important to have support groups, friends, just someone you can talk to, a mentor, so that you can discuss all this. Because when we tell ourselves we know all the answers, we're just lying to ourselves. We don't know everything. So I'd say if you find that you've been really struggling to meet your expectations over time, it's time you also reassess your goals and you look at how you've been planning to achieve these goals. Sometimes you can find that you have a really big goal and the steps to get there are also really big steps. It's important to step back and break them into more manageable steps so that you can be able to achieve them slowly over time. It will just build on itself.
And how do you deal with, or how do you practice to overcome the expectations, the unmet expectations in an everyday life?
I'd say it's important to recognize your own effort and to congratulate yourself where you can, because nobody claps longer and louder for you than yourself. So you take your time, you recognize where you have succeeded, and it will also motivate you to do better. So when you have that motivation, that self-appreciation, you'll be able to look at things from a different light, and it will be easier to tackle these challenges.
Let's talk about relationships. In relationships, you go in with a lot of expectations. May it be dating relationship, marriage, just friendship, acquaintances, work relationship. All this relationship we get in with a lot of expectations that more often than not, they are not met. Let's start from the working place, because if today you come here and you're interviewed to start working here, there is that what you expected to deliver by the end of the day. There are those goals that are set. There are those, the resume that you submitted, there are those things that they looked into and they saw that you're a good candidate. But when it comes to the ground delivery, you do not deliver as what maybe the company is expected or whoever gave you the opportunity is expecting. How are you able to match up to that expectation in the work environment?
First, I'll say it's important, let's say, to invest in career growth opportunities. Let's say if you need further learning opportunities, you find that you've entered a certain career and you're inadequate for it. It's not advisable to keep pushing and struggling through something that you don't even understand what you're doing, you don't understand what this is about. So it's important to look for continuous learning opportunities. And also it's important just to build resilience in such a situation, because there's always going to be setbacks. But as you build resilience, it's important that you work to better yourself. You can't recognize that you're falling short of what you're supposed to be doing and you're not doing anything about it, because it'll just get worse and worse, and you'll find it can lead to something like you losing your job because you're not doing anything about this disappointing aspect. So it's important to keep pushing yourself, to find ways to better yourself, find a mentor, talk to someone, or even consider a career change if you feel like it's too much. Yeah.
How can I practice self-compassion when unmet expectations are in the picture?
I think it's important to take a step back. There's always going to be negative thoughts. I think one important question you should ask yourself is there any evidence to support this, that I can't do it? Because if you've done it before, why shouldn't you do it again? So is there any evidence that supports these negative thoughts and feelings? And why am I not congratulating myself? You can find sometimes there are people who don't congratulate themselves. They expect others to do it for them, which is unrealistic in this world where everyone does everything for themselves. It's just me, myself, and I against the world. So it's important to recognize your own success and not to belittle your own achievements, and to be proud in what you do, so that you can be compassionate to yourself. Yeah.
Interesting. Moving on, as you're talking about relationships, when you are looking into now the dating relationship, we come in with a lot of expectations. If I'm dating today, I'm expecting so much from my boyfriend. If I get married today, I'm expecting so much from my husband, and the other way around. At what stage are we supposed to sit down and talk about the do's and don'ts and what you're expecting, and how honest am I supposed to be in regards to relationships and dating?
I personally believe that in a relationship, you should approach each other with 100% honesty, because you are pouring into someone and you're expecting them to pour into you. So I also feel like it's important to have this conversation quite early in the relationship, so that you can avoid your partner doing something that can, let's say, irritate you. They're not loving you the way you want to be loved. They're not treating you how you want to be treated. And if you don't have this conversation early, it can lead to issues such as resentment building. And when you start resenting your partner, you can find you guys are always fighting. And when you guys are fighting, the relationship is downgrading, everything is just becoming worse, and it can even lead to you guys breaking up. So it's important to have the conversation early on, so that you guys have set, you have like a path to follow, you've set your clear expectations, you know what you want from each other, so that you don't go down the line in years, you say, oh, you never do this to me, you never treat me like this, and they never knew because you never told them. So it's important to have it early, so that you can avoid a lot of disappointment down the line.
When you're saying we have it early, I'm looking at it from the school of thought whereby I might say, and then he or she might be irritated, or rather say, could be a turn off, one. Two, could be like, I'll scare the person away, and I don't want them to go away. So in order for me to maintain or keep them, I cook up issues, or I rather not communicate, because those are the two options. I either cook up a story for me to keep you, or I don't say anything about it. So we're not having this conversation because they are sensitive. And if I say it out what I want or what I'm expecting from you, you might think I'm maybe too demanding, or expecting too much, and you're maybe not able to deliver, and end up pushing you away. So in regards to this, how do you advise or tell this person to be able to stand up on their own, to be able to talk it out?
I can start by saying nobody is perfect. So it will be very unrealistic for you to go into a relationship expecting your partner to be 100% perfect. So you should always be prepared for some disappointments. And I'd say for the situation where you have something you don't want to say, or you're cooking up a story, I'll say it's important to be honest, because the truth will always come to light. The truth will always come to light. But if you keep it to yourself, the relationship ends up being very one-sided, because you're giving them what they're looking for, but they're not giving it to you because they don't even know what you're looking for. You're not telling them. So as the relationship becomes one-sided, you feel like you're putting in so much effort, they're not putting in enough effort. You'll start blaming them for small things in the relationship, small problems. So it'll really create that resentment. You'll start hating each other, or you start hating your partner. Your partner doesn't know what's going on. They just think you're losing feelings for them. But in reality, they're not meeting what you want, because you're not communicating. So I'd say it's very, very important to have that honest and open communication, because even in that communication, you guys will talk about things that can maybe irritate you. He'll say something that you just don't like. But it's also important to, in such a situation, to have a compromise. I can do this and you can do this. Let's meet in the middle, instead of me struggling to go all the way for you and it's not something that I can do. So it's really important to just meet in the middle and have some common ground to avoid disputes.
What are some of the common grounds that we are talking about? One, then the other question could be, we've talked a lot about communication. So from where I'm seated, I could say that communication is one of the pillars to be able to curb the unmet expectations. What are the other pillars that we are talking about today?
Communication, showing up for one another. It's important to always show up for one another. Being there to listen, putting yourself in your partner's shoes. it's really important to change your perspective, because sometimes something can happen in the relationship. Let's say your partner loses his job. Let's say maybe the company was downsizing and unfortunately he was let go of. It's important, instead of attacking him, it's taking him a long time to find a job, you put yourself in his shoes. You see what is it that would make him take so long to get a job? What are the struggles he's going through? How can I better understand him? That way you'll be able to be empathetic with one another. You're understanding each other better because you're looking at things from their view, because it's not always about your view. I'd say it's also important to really balance between your own needs and the needs of your relationship, because if you pour too much into the relationship but not enough into yourself, you'll burn yourself out, and it can lead to you getting depressed, stressed. It just manifests itself in other aspects of your life because you're not really focusing on yourself. And if you focus on yourself too much without pouring into the relationship, you'll find that the relationship lacks and lacks to the point that there's nothing left. So it's important to find that balance between your needs and the needs of the relationship.
Interesting. When you're looking into this, and like you've mentioned, losing a job, being terminated, and what have you, in matters to do with finances, there is a lot of expectations, especially to deliver, and especially when responsibility comes into picture. When you're talking about relationship in this matter, I'm looking more so into marriage, where children are in the picture. In matters to do with finances, unmet expectations in regards to, I might want our children to go into maybe a private school, into maybe an international school, and the resources are not there. How do we set realistic goals as a couple, as a family, for us to come into a common ground whereby we do not compromise the education of our children, but rather we are able to put our best foot forward for them, and be able to balance everything around the family as well?
I can say a lot of it really will come down to being honest with one another about your financial situation and having realistic expectations of one another. You can't expect someone whose salary doesn't match up to the fees to pay while you earn your own money and you don't want to contribute any. So I'd say it's important to have that understanding on how to contribute equally or equitably for one another in this relationship, for the children's education, let's say that. And it will all come down eventually to budgeting, how you spend your money, and being adults, I'm sure they'll be able to find, let's say, if it's a good public school that's cheap or a good private school that's also really affordable, but not to go out of your way to put your child in a really expensive school that you can't maintain. Let's say you can pay the school fees and you can pay the rent at the same time, but you'll find it's taking up so much of your financial pot. It's taking too much from your pot, and you guys are left with very little, like now for spending, let's say for groceries, utilities. You find now that you start struggling in many other areas, which will also really harm the children's well-being. Because let's say the child comes home, they've come from their very expensive school, but there's no electricity in the house to do their homework. So for them, the school day ends at school, because they know when they go home there's no electricity. So it's important to really find that balance, to find a realistic education option, for example, to avoid overstraining your financial situation. Yeah.
You're saying about communication and how to be realistic. How realistic are we supposed to be when we are talking and when we are having our communication today? It matters to do more so in relationships, whereby, like we have stated as an example in schooling, like we've stated as an example in dating life, how realistic are we supposed to set our own individual goals before we start now merging up with our partner's goals, and for us to see if we are able to align?
When you're setting these goals, I think the realistic aspect is accepting that not everything will be perfect. 100% of the time. There are going to be shortcomings here and there, and it's important to now figure out how you guys are going to navigate that. Because if there are some people who can say their realistic expectation is a man who loves them in all ways, they give them everything they want, and when they get a boyfriend, let's say it's a boyfriend, they've seen their situation, they know what this guy can provide, but they still have those expectations. I think it's important to be also honest with yourself and just ask yourself, what are you looking for? Will I find it with this person? And I think it's also very unfair to lead someone on. You lie to them that they're fulfilling your expectations, they're the perfect partner, but in reality, you're also unfulfilled. It's very unfair to yourself as well, because you keep lying to keep, let's say, to protect their ego or something. And in the long run, you're the one who'll get hurt. So it's also important to also look at yourself and what you're looking for, and not to put what you really want in the hands of someone who can't give you what you're looking for. That's lying to them, that's lying to yourself, and at the end, it's very painful for everyone involved.
Interesting. I want us to take a short break, and when we come back, I want us to look at how to embrace flexibility, because when you're also rigid in your own thought and perspective, then you're not able even to, you'll be more compromised in the regards of expectations. Everything will be unmet, you'll be unsatisfied, you'll be depressed, you'll be eventually angry with everyone around you, even yourself. So how are we able to embrace flexibility, and how are we able to exercise it as well in regards to the unmet expectations? That is what I want us to look when you come back after the break. Viewer, I hope you're learning as much as I am. Send in your question, your comments across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa. Our SMS line is 21144. We'll be back shortly.
Leo tutakuwa tunaangazia masuala mengi kuhusu uongozi na maendeleo, na pia tutakuwa tunaangalia uongozi wa kuigwa na vijana. Kuna idara za serikali, kuna tume ya EACC, kuna idara za mahakama na kuna parliament, lakini tumeshindwa kutekeleza chapter 6 of Kenyan Constitution to the point that ya kwamba watoto wachanga ndio wanatuonyesha jinsi ya ndio wanatuweka katika mistari sabamba ya kuratibisha kifungu cha 6 cha katiba ya Kenya.
When we try, tukijaribu sana kuangalia mambo politically na tuangalie vizuri pande hii nyingine ya kijamii, nafikiri hapo kuna kuwa na mwanya katikati, na hiyo mwanya ndiyo ambayo sasa imekuja kujazwa na hii generation.
What has it this far that now they are saying enough is enough?
Wakati Daktari William Samoei Ruto alichukua hatamu za uongozi, mnakumbuka ya kwamba the opposition walianza zile demonstrations zao za kusema the cost of living imeenda juu sana. Ijaribu kushukishwa kidogo, ili watu wakuwe na muamana katika nchi. Na hiyo pia iliadhiri serikali yake pakubwa.
Sababu ya watu kwenda kwa maandamano ilikuwa kutoridhika na mambo yanavyofanywa. Wakati finance bill ilipitishwa na wakati tunaangalia sababu ya zenyewe kupitishwa, tunaona si sababu za kusaidia vijana.
What's happened after the Kenya Kwanza imereduce still wanamwandamania?
So ile ambayo wananchi wa Kenya wanakasirika ni kwa sababu we are expecting leaders, and especially led by the president, to be giving us policies that can give effect to Article 43 of the Kenyan Constitution.
Hello everyone! Welcome to Fun. Alright class, friends, do you know what we're going to make today? Yes, we're going to make a star. Now let's begin our class. Time to make. First, you're going to fold your paper into triangles. Now we are done with the star.
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back, viewer, to Chungu cha Jamii. Today we are talking about how to deal with unmet expectations. What are these expectations that you have that are met by yourself, by your family, by your friends? Send in your question, interact with us across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa. Our SMS line is 21144. So before we went on a break, I had asked in regards to the what you're talking about today and how to embrace flexibility. And from what you've just talked about and the examples that we have been able to give, how do we embrace flexibility in the unmet expectations?
I think it's embracing flexibility is about changing your perspective. It's not good to have one rigid opinion because times change and opinions will always change. So it's important to really look at how you can become an all-rounded person. So I'd say when embracing flexibility, let's say, for example, in the example we gave earlier, you guys are in a tough financial spot, but you're trying to provide a good education for your children. I can say it's important to look at all your options. Don't always just go for number one. I want the number one school in the country, knowing you can't afford it. It's important to be flexible and allow yourself to look for other opportunities that won't put as much strain on you. Even in relationships, you can find the goalpost is moving. It's always moving for your partner and for yourself and what you're looking for. It's important to accommodate one another to avoid disappointing each other. So I'd say you can have this communication every so often. What has changed in the relationship? What are we looking for? What are we doing that we could do different? You just change your opinions and have a broader base. Yeah.
Interesting. There's a question that is coming in. I'd want to ask. It's asking, what strategies do you use to manage your expectations in personal relationship?
I'd say in personal relationships, it's important to have communication on what you want and how you want it. It's important to look at things from different perspectives. It's not always just about you in a relationship. It's a two-party thing. So it's important to find something that works for both of you. It's also important to compromise because you can't always expect everything to be perfect 100% of the time. So it's important to compromise, but I wouldn't say to totally lower your expectations, but to have realistic expectations. I feel like there's a difference between the two because when you lower your expectations, you can settle for less than you deserve. But when you have realistic expectations, you guys will be able to talk it out, find a middle ground and be able to move forward. Yeah.
Interesting. Someone else is asking, how do you balance hope and resilience when setting expectations for yourself or others?
Hope is very important to have because it's what motivates us and drives us most of the time. So when balancing hope and resilience with your expectations, that's where the realistic aspect of it comes in. You're hopeful to achieve a certain goal, but be realistic about how you're achieving this goal. And also this realisticness will help you have the resilience to start to face disappointments, loss, denial of opportunities. So when you balance the hope and resilience with your expectations, it's important to be very realistic about what you're looking for to avoid also giving yourself unnecessary disappointments.
Interesting. Final question, maybe the one that I'll take will be, how do you move forward after feeling disappointed by unmet expectations?
Moving forward is something that takes time. It's important to give yourself time and to allow yourself that room to grow away from what people are saying. It's important to listen to yourself to reassess, step back and reassess what you're doing. If there's something that you feel that's making you fall short, it's important to kind of look at it from a different angle. How else can I tackle this problem instead of giving up? Because when you give up, that's when you can say you failed. Otherwise, anything else is just a setback. It's important to just keep it pushing and motivating yourself, which can be very hard, but it's not impossible.
Moving on, how do you seek support? Because unmet expectations are things that drain us emotionally, physically, and maybe financially. Name it, it will just drain you. That is why it's unmet in the first place. How do you seek for support for you to be able to grow and be able to meet these expectations by the end of the day?
I can say you can find support in your friends and family, and also in peer support groups. Peer support groups are there for all ages. It just doesn't end once you get to young adulthood. So if you, let's say you're struggling in your career, you can find a group of your peers in the same career, and you can be able to communicate and ask them, I'm struggling in this certain area, how do I overcome this? It's important to build that community because no man can do anything alone. We are all in this together, so it's important to have this community. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You can also find professional services like therapists, counselors, career coaches, life coaches, and they can work with you. You can even talk to your pastor or someone in your church, someone who you feel can really connect with you, someone who you feel will understand what you're going through. But it's important to not be afraid to ask for help.
In our society today, and in an African culture per se, we are not open into asking for help and going out for help. I'd say it maybe from the perspective of men more so, because women, we do talk. We'll come and tell you, hey, I'm going through this ABCD, and be relieved and be able to get help. But when you're talking about men, on the other hand, they have been brought up in our society where men don't talk about their problems. Men solve all of their problems. Because even if when we are going in a relationship, we also expect that man to fulfill my problems and to be able to deliver by the end of the day. And not remembering they also have problems, and mostly they don't share. From a man's perspective, and when you're dealing with men, when they come to you maybe asking for help and for support, in a ratio of 1 to 10, how many men would you say they step out and ask for help genuinely? And how does our society embrace when a man is in difficulty, well, in regards to the expectations? Because we expect so much from our men today, and they deliver, and some do not deliver. How are we able to help them by the end of the day?
For men, it's true. Men tend to keep their problems to themselves.
Sure.
But recently, I can say there's been a shift in society. Men are becoming more comfortable talking about certain issues that they're facing, though it's still very rare to find. And I can say to encourage men, it's important to be vulnerable. And even if this vulnerability, let's say, you can be vulnerable with your girl and she sees it as kind of emasculating, she sees you're not man enough, I'd say that's a very toxic standard that we've set for men. And I'd like to encourage men to form their own support groups, just men to men, just talking amongst themselves, because you can find it's really hard to go to your girlfriend, your wife, someone else, just men to men. I feel like they can have honest conversations free of judgment with one another, because they understand the struggles that each of them are going through, because they're similar for all of them, unrealistic expectations from everyone. So it's important for them to have this community. It might seem daunting, but it's something that I'd really encourage, because it would help push away this toxic culture of men keeping things to themselves and it piling up, and eventually it just explodes in the worst way possible. So it's important to have an outlet. It can be your guys who you watch football with. You guys can just talk sometimes, just keeping it real with one another in a space free of judgment. Yeah.
How real are we in regards to what you've just mentioned? Because you said you would encourage men to be also be open to be vulnerable to the person that they do trust or the person they can open up to. I'm looking at it from the perspective of, okay, in a marriage relationship, it makes a lot of sense. But when you are dating, it's very difficult. Even if you're married, it's also very difficult for a man to come and tell you all their difficulties and struggles. But when you're talking about these support groups and mentors and everything, how honest are we to ourselves and to these people that we are open to? But by the end of the day, we also like don't want to be judged, and we also want to be able to get help. To what extent can you be open and be this vulnerable, in mind keeping the fear of the judgmental and also the fear of you're being a sissy. You as a man, you're not supposed to be complaining about A, B, C, D. And the truth to what I'm maybe complaining or what I'm talking about today, I don't know how to navigate around it. But to maybe to the person that I'm talking to is like easy peasy. You're not even supposed to be complaining. But at the same time, this person is not helping me. It's just he or she is just bragging about it, but per se is not putting out help that will be able to help me as an individual. How are we able to overcome such a situation?
For such a situation, I can say the problem now doesn't lie with the guy being vulnerable, but the issue is now the person who they're communicating, the person they're opening up to. If the person is being very judgmental, ultimately there's nothing you can do about how someone reacts to something you tell them.
Sure.
So I can say it's important, it's also realistic to say that you can't be 100% vulnerable, especially if it's something that it's new to you. It's important to kind of protect yourself. It's also expected you'll keep some things to yourself to protect yourself. But I'd say if you're in a situation where you feel like someone is judging you or not helping you, it's important to tell them, hey, hapo said it's like you're just showing off. But sometimes it's hard to do that. So you just listen to them and you can just walk away at the end of the day. If you're being realistic, you can just walk away from them and find someone else who understands. It's a hard task. It takes time.
Sure, it does. When we are saying about walking away, what happens if this person you're not able maybe to untangle yourself from this person? Could be your relative, your parent, your mentor, someone that you had built so much trust or maybe dependent on, expecting so much also from them to be able to help you, but by the end of the day, you're not getting that help that you wanted from them. How are you able to shake yourself from them and be able to untie yourself from whatever too much expectation you had from? Because, you know, if I'm calling you today, I'm telling you, hey girl, I'm in this financial state and I need you to sort me out, and you're not able to sort me out. And how am I able now to, because maybe when I'm calling you, you're the last hope that I'm having. So if you do not come up or come through for me at this time, I'm doomed. This is just an example of financial status, but rather now we are looking at it from a broad perspective of maybe even advice. I'm expecting you to, and maybe you've never walked in these shoes that I'm walking in today and you have nothing to give back to me. If I'm expecting this from you, do we have those mentors or these people who are open and honest enough to tell you that I've not been able to walk in these shoes, so I'm not able to help you, and maybe refer you to someone else? Do you have such situations in ground and even ways and channels to be able to direct this person further?
Yes, such things exist. You can go to someone and they can just tell you, honestly, I can't help you, but I think so and so can help you. And it's important to also if they tell you that, you can take that information in stride and just go and see what they're telling you and see how it is, whether it will work out. But if they're telling you they can't help you, but there's also, they can't refer you, it's important now to just go out of your way just to find another solution for yourself. Because at the end of the day, it's your problem, you're the one carrying that problem. So it's important to exhaust all your options. If that was your last option, I think now you can turn in a different direction. Let's say you are looking for just a friend. Now you can find someone who specializes in that guidance. You can go maybe to a pastoral option. You can go to your therapist, or you can find a counselor, a coach, someone who's now, that's their job. Someone who can now guide you in a more professional manner. Yeah.
Interesting. I want us to take a short break, and when you come back, I want us to look on how to educate yourself to be able to have and to set realistic goals that are met by the end of the day. Viewer, I hope you're learning as much as I am. Send in your question, your comments, interact with us across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa. Our SMS line is 21144. We'll be back shortly.
Today we have amazing topic. Hey, turning passion into profit. Sijui passion yako ni gani? We are going to have a guest here mwenye anaenda kutuambia how she turned her passion into profit.
So I learned it from my mom. I guess nilichukua from my mom. And then my mom alichukua from her mom.
Inheritance.
And then her mom mimi nimenema after the mom. My God.
Wow.
Kitu iko kwa damu. Sasa hiyo kitu ilinipea motivation. Like, guy, kumbe naweza shona hizi nguo by the way na niuzie mtu na buy. Ni make something out of it. So hiyo ndo motivation by the way. Kwa Christmas ndo ilikuwa motivation. Mnasemanga that family don't support each other. Me, my family. Nasema my family imekuwa my greatest supporter. And then my friends. Because if it's an urgent order, hata mimi ukiangalia tu my WhatsApp, the first caption na kukujianga, we don't accept urgent orders.
Oh my God.
I need my time. Inaweza tengeneza earrings, key holders, neck, chokers, key holders, what else? Mats, bottles,
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back, viewer, to Chungu cha Jamii. Today we are talking about how to meet unmet expectations, how to deal with unmet expectations. How do you deal with unmet expectation from a personal level, from a relationship level, from a work level? Send in your question, interact with us across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa. Our SMS line is 21144. So before we went on a break, I had asked you a question on how can I educate myself into setting or having more realistic expectations?
To set more realistic expectations, I think it's also important to look at the people around you, people who are in similar situations to you and how they are dealing with it. You can pick from what they're doing and how you can apply it into your own life so that you can teach yourself how to deal with these unmet expectations in certain areas of life. I can say it's also important to have someone to talk to. They can, like a mentor, a peer guide, a peer counselor. They really can help you change your perspective up on things. You can see things from a new way. They really open your mind to more possibilities. It's really hard to do things alone, so it's important to find someone who can work with you in such a situation. There are also self-help books that you can read. Let's say if you're looking for a more just solo thing, there are self-help books, there are motivational videos, TED Talk videos online. You can, in this era of information, there's a lot of content at our disposal, so you can just do some light research and you'll be able to find what you're looking for.
Interesting. What roles does positive talks play in managing our expectations?
Positive talk kind of builds around you. When you talk to yourself positively, you'll find that you motivate yourself more. as opposed to when you're always dragging yourself down, like you're always telling yourself, I can't do this, why am I doing this, this isn't my thing, I just know I won't succeed. You've already created a mental block in your mind, and you will not be able to push yourself to your limits and challenge yourself. So when you have this positive self-talk, you kind of open your mind to accept more things. And when you open your mind to more things, they will come to you. So when you talk to yourself, you're motivating yourself, you're pushing yourself, you're challenging yourself and encouraging yourself, you'll find it's easier for you to look at life in a more positive, optimistic manner when you're always just looking at the glass half empty instead of the glass half full. You'll never find yourself to be ready to take on a task. You'll always feel inadequate. And at the end of the day, you'll always be afraid to put your best foot forward, despite having such expectations for yourself. You just can't push yourself because you don't have that positive self-talk, you don't have that positive worldview. You'll find that you're not putting your best foot forward, and more often than not, it will lead to disappointment. Yeah.
You've mentioned something very incredible about us putting your best foot forward. And when today, as we are talking, how the unmet expectations drills us, it also narrows down to mental health, something that you've just mentioned. How do we look out for our mental wellness in regards to unmet expectations? Because if all these are unmet, then it goes without question that we are going to, by the end of the day, we are going to be mentally unstable. How are we able to help and navigate about the mental wellness?
I'll say you can practice self-care. It's important to look after yourself. Self-care can come in very many forms. Self-care is just something that you do for yourself that will help you calm down and take a breath as you look at things. So it can be something like meditation. It can be something like just going for a walk to clear your mind, reading a book. It can be anything, just something that makes you feel grounded. Self-care is something that just makes you feel grounded. It brings you back now to ground zero. You feel calm. You can also, aside from practicing self-care, you should also build resilience, because life has its own challenges and it's expected that they shall come. So when you build that resilience, it will help you handle situations better instead of breaking down at any challenge or any issue. You will be able to tackle it from a different angle. Related to that is also changing your perspective, because let's say you've fallen short in this area. You need to ask yourself, what can I do different? What can I approach? Who can I approach? What can I do to be able to turn this situation around? Instead of just giving up, take a step back and look at it from a different angle. Yeah.
Interesting. How can one build his or her confidence in regards to what we are talking about today?
Building confidence, a lot of it comes from positive self-talk. You need to believe in yourself, because it's going to be very hard to be confident in something if you don't even believe that you can actually do it. So that positive self-talk will help you believe in yourself more, which will build your confidence. It's also important to expose yourself to situations over and over again. If, let's say, for example, you're in sales or something, you have a certain quota you need to meet at the end of every period. I can say, when you're feeling like you're not confident enough, just keep pushing yourself, keep putting yourself out there, and eventually it will grow. It will build over time, because you keep challenging yourself, you keep pushing yourself, you keep motivating yourself. You'll eventually find that you have the confidence that you're looking for.
As we were starting this conversation, you had said that not everyone claps for you. And there is also a proverb that say, not everyone that is clapping for you is meaning well for you. Some are just clapping to kill you. So how are you able to differentiate these claps, to be able to see who is motivating you, not rather motivating, but rather supporting you, your cheerleader, who is cheering you and who is not cheering you in a positive way, but rather wants to see your downfall?
I'd say someone who cheers for you, will be there for you. Even when you fall down, they'll be there to offer you their hand to pull you back up. And someone who's just clapping with no good intentions will celebrate in your downfall. They won't be there for you when you're going through it and you're really struggling. So I think that's one really big identifying factor. What is their reaction when you fall short of what they were expecting from you? Will they be happy to see you fail, or will they be there to help you? So you can really be able to discern. But ultimately, it's also very important for you as a person to kind of release that grip of external validation, because you can find you're just happy, people are clapping for you, and as a result, you'll find yourself getting into deals with people who don't mean well for you. They'll exploit you, like, let's say, shady terms and conditions. You just sign them because there's a big fruit somewhere that you really want, and you just want that validation from them. So it's important to step back from that and also kind of just be happy with your own achievements, and also be very cautious of who you share everything with, because you can share with some people and they don't have your intentions, they don't have good intentions for you, and you can find maybe this person has already shown you this before, but you kind of brushed it under the rug, you didn't think too much of it. I'll say it's very important for you to look at how people treat you, how people work with you all the time, even when you're not the best person to work with. It's important to see how you guys relate.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm being told that we are running out of time. Maybe as you give your parting shot, if there is anything that you felt that you've not touched on and you ought to have touched on, maybe you can highlight it or talk about it briefly as you also gave us your parting shot.
All I have to say is we've discussed almost everything, but I can say it's really important to practice self-care, to build your own resilience, and to be there for yourself, to be realistic with yourself, because you can have all these hopes and dreams, and all of them are, yes, they are very valid, but you also need to be very realistic with how you approach them. You can't just go into something expecting it to be a success right away. You should always be prepared. Don't be afraid to fail, because just falling down is just a part of life. You just pick yourself and keep running. Don't give up, and just keep pushing yourself, and you'll be able to get to where you want at the end of the day.
Thank you so much for honoring our invitation and for coming to talk to us today about the topic that you have had today. Viewer, let's continue this conversation online across all our social media networks. That's GBS TV Africa. Our SMS line is 21144. Till next time, have a nice time. Goodbye.
Everywhere